After a convincing series win against the Phillies over the weekend, the Mariners have put up two stinkers in a row against the Tigers. Albeit the third game against the Phillies was not good. We got shut out. That's not the point. Tigers series has not gone in the direction that we had wanted. Can they salvage it in the third game? Well, we're going to talk about that in this episode, along with are there reinforcements coming? How's Dom Canzone looking down in his rehab assignment, along with Ryan Bliss being called up to the Cub and Cade Marlowe getting optioned? And Julio? What's up with Julio? And as always, we'll finish it up with a preview for the upcoming weekend series against the Mets, the final of the homestand. Welcome into episode 111 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav network, available on all your preferred audio listening platforms. Give us a 5-star review, why don't you? The IHOP episode, the entire restaurant, not IHOP, IHOP. Colton, he's not here. Not Colton is also not here. Don't need to play into the shticks too much, okay? He can't come around every 4 or 5 episodes. We're not going to get crazy with it. This Tigers series has been frustrating. Before we talk about it, I do want to just say thank you to everyone that came out for the game against the Phillies on Saturday. That was the Mariner Mojo meetup day. For those of you that did not make it out, apologies if, didn't see you there. But guys that were there, obviously we had Mike and his posse, did not catch their names, but shout out to them. Took a great photo of the entire group. It was awesome. Along with Dorian and his dad. Very, very exciting. Very nice to meet you guys. Andrew, pleasure to meet you as well. Minnie Galen, hopefully your drive is going or went well. And Lucario, just a great time hanging out, chilling. And obviously DJ Manny D, Daydara, coming out and hanging out with us in center field. It was awesome. Some people that were not there that did recognize us and say hello. Bennett, the homie, shout out Bennett, got a photo. Hopefully we don't look stupid in it. Jordan, nice to meet you as well. Dumb Lego guy, don't need a gifted member this month. The luck was with you. You met us at the game as well, along with Mariners buddy Dalen. Second day on the job, seeing some people they recognize from YouTube was absolutely sick. Meeting you, beautiful eyes, similar to Julio Rodriguez. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, whoa, taken aback. And of course Max, the guy at the end of the game, walking by the soda machine. I was there refilling Colton and Mike's soda, and you just walked past me and gave me this big and I gave it right back to you. It was awesome. The feeling of being just someone knows who I am because we're doing this. It's incredible. It's like a 1 in a million feeling, which are terrible betting odds, along with this being a terrible lead into an ad. But of course, get all your latest betting news and betting lines and everything with BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your #1 source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you could receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything, including the Olympics. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games or Olympic events are being played. When the game's over, though, you can head on over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or even unwind with one of the over 150 slots games available. Head to the website today to get in on the action, and when you're there, use promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here. The finale for the Phillies series resulted in a 6-0 shutout, I think was the final line. Zach Wheeler absolutely shoved. So the Mariners offense didn't really look similar to the first 2 games, and that kind of bled into the first 2 games here against Detroit. On Tuesday, after a day off, you've got Keter Montero on the bump against the Mariners. He's a rookie. He goes 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, 8 Ks. So just about how you'd expect it to go. Luke Raley hit a homer in the 5th. The offense, we put together 5 hits. Didn't really get a lot done here. It was a pinch hit situation at the end of the game where Mitch Garver comes in for Luke Raley. A questionable decision, people will say, by Scott Service. The rest of the lineup, Cal didn't have a great game, 0 for 3 with 2 Ks. It's just, you muster 5 hits across 9 innings against a rookie pitcher. Sure, the Tigers, they're not the worst team, but they were 6 games under 500 heading into this game for a reason. They're down Riley Green. They don't have Kerry Carpenter. So their big offense is okay, who's it going to come from? Parker Meadows in the first game goes 2 for 4 with 2 RBI. Matt Vierling, 2 for 5. It's just, This first game was one that you needed to win. Coming off a series win against the Phillies was nice, but you knew on Sunday the Mariners offense looked more about what we've seen the entire year as opposed to the first two games where they put together 10 and 6 runs respectively. You needed to come out and punch the Tigers in the face in this series, specifically in game one, knowing what you're heading up against in game two. Castillo in this game, I mean, the batting luck, just BABIP, was against the Mariners, it felt like, in this game. 6 innings, 8 hits, 3 earned, 9 Ks for Luis. Those 8 hits, a bunch of them touched the infield grass, like all scattered around the infield. Just guys couldn't get gloves on it. There was a play that Luke Raley just didn't really. I don't know if it was a missed. I mean, he just didn't dive. He could have maybe put a little bit more effort, put a little pep into his step to make the play. I think it allowed 1 or 2 runs to score, but yeah, just not a great overall collective game by the Mariners here. Had chances, but not a ton. It's just the Tigers did limit a lot of the Mariners' base, like guys on base. 5 hits, they only allowed 2 walks, so the Mariners just didn't really have a whole lot of chances, and the chances that the Tigers got in this game, they did capitalize on. I mentioned needing to punch the Tigers in the face in that first game because on the bump in game two, Tarik Skubal, the leading potential favorite to win the American League Cy Young, George Kirby's fourth in that regard, by the way, they were dueling on the mound on Wednesday. 7 innings, 3 hits, 2 earned, 2 walks, 9 Ks for Tarik Skubal, advancing to 13-4 on the year, meaning the Mariners lose this game, ultimately 6-2. Kirby goes 5 innings, 7 hits, 3 earned, 1 walk, 7 Ks. He gives up 2 home runs, a leadoff home run to Perez, and then Jake Rogers, a home run in the 4th inning there. The Tigers scattered 13 hits across the 9 innings. So between the first two games, the Tigers put together 23 hits for a team that is known on limiting opposing teams' scoring and just run scoring opportunities. 23 hits for the Mariners across 18 innings pitched is not a good sign. It's not a recipe for success. And in that same vein, the lack of production from the offense will do you in just the same. 5 hits, only scored 2 runs in this one. It was a 2-run home run by Cal Raleigh. Garver got a double off of Skubal in this game, which was nice, but ultimately doesn't really do anything at the end of the day as far as scoring is concerned. Randy had a double, goes 2 for 3 in this game. Hitless for Robles, 0 for 4 in this one. The talk of the town. There's 2 instances, I think, that are going to be talks of the town for this specific game. The first, or the one that happens, I guess, earlier rather than later. Cal Raleigh hits a towering fly ball out to center, maybe right center field, and Parker Meadows he's got trampolines in his shoes. He's got springs in his feet. Bro should go fly to Paris, participate in like the pole vault or the high jump, whatever. Robs Cal of a home run. Would have been a go-ahead 2-run home run in the bottom of that 8th inning. Keeps the Mariners down 1 heading into that 9th. Top of the 9th. A bullpen decision of all times. Scott Service turns to recently picked up off of some team scraps, Jonathan Hernandez. And Jonathan Hernandez, he's not having a great year, did not have a great night. Only gets 1 out, walks 2, gives up a hit, and has 3 earned runs. I think Trent Thornton does allow some of those to score. I walked away after the 2 walks given up by Jonathan Hernandez. Some of the bullpen decisions just not great. Something that I thought was interesting was Colin Snyder. So he threw 12 pitches. He's gone more than an inning before. I felt like maybe you could have left him in there and got a little crafty with it, but maybe they didn't want him to go up and down in between innings. I don't know. They lose this game. That's all that matters. It is what it is. Vierling, 3 for 5 in this game. Another good game from him. Gio Urshela, 2 for 5. Drove in 2 RBI here. So you lose this game. It was one that you probably thought you'd lose with Skubal on the mound opposite you. But the fact that you're only down 1 for the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and then the eighth inning, and you can't scratch off another one. And you had chances, definitely had their chances. Skubal ran into some traffic, I Bleav, in his final inning. Had runners on first and second, and Jorge Polanco, first pitch swinging, gets a swinging bunt. And credit that Skubal had to make a play off the mound, just not ideal from the Mariners. The bullpen decision, like, you had Garcia and Munoz in your pen that you probably could have gone to. It's the whole conversation about, oh, this is what they've done before. They don't want to use them until they're in a tie situation, playing the hypothetical of like, we could get there. This is not a situation where you can play around anymore. You knew the Astros won before your game concluded, meaning that they were tied with you at the top of the AL West. If you lose this game, you go a half game down. If you win this game, you go a half game up. You need to give yourself the best chance to win. If you think throwing Jonathan Hernandez in a one-run ball game in the top of the ninth is the best chance to win, you are sorely mistaken. And I have defended Scott plenty this year. This is indefensible. It's just not okay. It's not a winning method. And Twitter has already taken storm over it, and I'm sure Ryan Divish's mentions look like an absolute war field. Just terrible. I have avoided it personally, just going online. It's just not worth my time, because I know what we're all saying. I know we're all pretty much in unison agreeing, yep, that was the wrong move. And did it cost you this game? Maybe. Is the offense partially blame here? Maybe. But going with Jonathan Hernandez there is a non-competitive baseball decision, in my opinion. You do have Bryan Woo opposite Kenta Maeda in the final game, I Bleav. It has not been announced on MLB.com if it is Kenta Maeda. Fangraphs has Kenta Maeda listed, so you'll know by the time you're hearing this, more than likely. It is another night game on Thursday, so maybe you won't know by you're hearing this, but regardless, Bryan Woo, his last time out, went 7 innings for the first time in his career. A great start from Bryan Woo out there. He's pitched extremely well the entire year. I'm not worried about the Mariners pitching. Sure, Jonathan Hernandez, that's the outlier, the microcosm of the second game. If you don't go him there, you go to Garcia, you go to Munoz, it's probably a 3-2 loss at the end of the day. If Bryan Woo goes out there and gives you 5-6 innings, decent quality, you have a good chance at winning this game, regardless of who's on the mound against you. Yeah, the Mariners haven't really looked competitive, but you just have to go out there and make some sort of offensive change. And if it's Ryan Bliss getting a start in that second game, in the third game, or if Dom Canzone gets called up, I have no idea. Dom Canzone, the roster move hasn't happened yet. If he's just going to chill down in Tacoma for a bit, so be it. When he comes up, he'll probably see some time. There's not a lot going right for the Mariners offense. It looked great against Philadelphia the first 2 games, but those 3 games since on a 3-game losing skid has not looked good. And those reinforcements, like I mentioned, Bliss, is he really going to provide some great big change? He could. He can. Has he done it at the big leagues this year so far? On the road a little bit, but not at home. And has Dom really put together a ultra competitive season at the, like, when you take a step back and maybe remove yourself from like, oh yeah, Dom Canzone, we like Dom Canzone. Yeah. No, his season has been pretty subpar. On the season, he's batting 211, 289 with a 394 slug, a 93 WRC plus. Sure, in Tacoma, in 8 games, he's got a 178 WRC plus. Like, bro's tearing it up in Tacoma, in the PCL. That's what he's done. He has tore it up at every level of the minor leagues. Just has not fully put together in the bigs. And sure, has he had limited opportunities? Yes. Is now the best time to give Dom Canzone run in your outfield? I mean, you are still rolling out Mitch Haniger, who's had a better second half. Has he done anything for you against the Tigers? Not really. So, depending on who's on the mound, if it's a righty and Canzone gets the call, I wouldn't mind seeing him in right field. Give Haniger a day off. Just see what you got around your team. Rayleigh at first. Turner will DH. Cal will catch, because Garver is going to get a day off after catching Kirby. So there's options. It's just, how much will these reinforcements really help you right now? don't get me wrong, I want Dom to succeed. I would love Ryan Bliss to come up and be a spark plug, like we've had so many other times in years past, like Sam Haggerty coming up and being a spark plug, and even like times where Jared Kelenic would pop off. Like there's moments where you've seen it. Abe Toro in like 2021, just the clutch gene. There's been moments. Are we due for one right now at the beginning of August? I don't know if we're due, but the Mariners definitely need something. They need a jolt. They need something to wake them up. And there's not really a full timetable on it, but Julio Rodriguez is on his path to recovery. Essentially, that's a weird way to say that. It seems like he's close. He's out there in the field, obviously doing stuff before the games, trying to turn on his ankle, maybe make a little bit more like explosive speed turns and stuff like that. It's still a little uncomfortable, it looks like, and in the batter's box, it's the same kind of vibe I'm getting. He's not fully healthy. They're not going to run it out there when he's definitely not fully healthy. Like you need him to be like, okay, yeah, I can go do this. But there was, I believe, a Seattle Times article that went out right before the game on Wednesday, just kind of like speculating, theorizing where the Mariners may take the direction of Julio Rodriguez until he is like fully healthy. And I mentioned like they probably won't bring him back until then, but they have the opportunity to DH him potentially, which seems counterintuitive. But if you want to get his bat in there and he feels good enough to swing and run, maybe not run as hard, and he definitely, if he's in the outfield, he's going to do a lot more running than he normally would just DHing. That's an option. The Mariners could just bring Julio maybe 5 to 7 games back early and have him DH for those games, let him still recover, and then throw him back in the outfield, because Robles has shown that he is capable in center field, and he should be an everyday fixture in your lineup so long as he is healthy. You've got Randy out in left, and then if you've got Canzone, he can play right. If you've got Haniger, you can play him in right. If you've got Luke Raley, you can play him in right. You don't need Julio in the outfield, but could you use his bat? Yeah, probably. There's definitely some glaring holes in this Mariners team right now. That is Julio Rodriguez the answer? I mean, he hasn't been for a large part of this year, but could he be a spark plug similar, like I mentioned, to other guys coming up? Yeah, I'd say so. Julio Rodriguez, he's a generational talent. Before his injury, the last 7, he was hitting 417, 500 with a 708 slug. The last 15 as well, going further back, 375, 434 with a 688 slug. Julio was maybe hitting his stride. And will he be able to get back to that when he returns, especially just DHing? I'm not certain, but it's an option for the Mariners. And realistically, you've already lost this series to the Tigers, who, sure, they had a pretty decent July. Are they really a threat? No. You've already lost the series. You need some sort of change. You've got the Mets coming into town. If Julio's DHing on Friday against the Mets, I wouldn't be surprised. Even though I just kind of said maybe 5 minutes ago, like, oh, they're not going to bring him back until he's fully healthy. You need something. You need to go out there and give better competitive efforts. And if Julio Rodriguez is a guy that can go do that for you, I'm fine with it. Does that scare me that maybe the injury risks will kind of persist? Of course. But you're at a situation at this juncture of the season where you're only 3 games above 500, but you're a half game back of the division with 46 to go? Less than 50, obviously, but this team just needs something. And going up against the 60 and 54 Mets, I wouldn't call that the thing that they need. You know what I mean? It's a fun story for the Mets this year, I'd say, with maybe people writing them off a little bit, especially in the division of the Phillies and the Braves. But with them coming to town, like, am I confident that they're gonna be able to play close to the Mets? Maybe, just because they played closer to the Phillies than they have the Tigers. The Mariners have a problem of like playing down to their opponents pretty sporadically. I wouldn't say that they've played down to every single opponent that they've played. They obviously rinsed the White Sox in Chicago, swept them, but you did get swept by the Angels post All-Star break at home. You lost 3 out of 4 in Anaheim before the All-Star break. You lost 2 out of 3 to a very poor performing Toronto Blue Jays team earlier at home in July. You lost the series to Miami. You lost the series to the Nationals. Like, there's been moments throughout this season where the Mariners have played down to their opponents. Do I think that they've got that weird juju from 2022 where they're just going to play up and down to their opponents? I hope not. They got to beat the bad teams, but if they can play up to some of the better teams in the league, that does bode well, especially against the New York Mets. 6 games above 500, they are 60-54, currently a half game back of the third spot in the National League wildcard. They are 5-5 over their last 10. They're currently facing Colorado, so not like a crazy series for them to be coming off of, heading then to Seattle. But on the bump, it's listed, and the Mariners starters aren't listed, but if it was the normal turn through the rotation, it would be Bryce Miller on the mound on Friday against Jose Quintana, having a pretty decent year for the Mets. Unfortunately for us, we do get a pretty tough turn through this rotation against the Mets, and they added some guys at the deadline in Paul Blackburn, but we don't face him. Again, first game, it's Jose Quintana, a lefty on the bump. The Mets, again, they're a pretty good team. They're currently the 6th best offense in all of baseball by WRC+. They've got a 112 on the year. Where they run into a little bit of problems has been their pitching, which they bolstered at the deadline. Obviously, we sent them Ryan Stanek, if we want to count that as a move that would maybe bolster their bullpen, but they've got a 4.10 team ERA on the year. That's 18th in all of baseball. The Mariners still clinging on to the top spot. First ERA, best 3.51 in all of baseball. Somehow, some way, the Mariners are prevailing in that regard. Their offense, 21st in all of baseball, 95 WRC+, trying, just scratching tooth and nail to pull themselves out of the depths there to try and get back to league average. Will they be able to do it against the Mets? Your guess is as good as mine, guys, okay? As good as mine. Quintana on the year, I mentioned he's having an okay year. An ERA just under 4. He's got a 3.95. Got a 7.15 K per 9 and a 3.35 walk per 9. So, walks a decent amount of guys. Never been a huge strikeout guy, especially in the last couple of years here. He's having a little bit of like a resurgence, if you want to call it that, with the Mets. But again, this is not an arm that you really need to be worried about. The big question is like, okay, yeah, you got a lefty on the bump. How is that going to fare? What does your lineup look like? Mitch Haniger's running reverse splits against a lefty, but he'll probably still see a start because Scott doesn't want to play Luke Raley. Garver will probably be in this game as well, would be my guess. You've got a good chance to maybe get Garver going, especially since you've got 2 lefties opposite you in this series. First one being Jose Quintana. The second one, a surprise, pretty solid year out of Sean Manaea. Cut the hair. Is that a big differentiating factor for him? Maybe. But on the year, Sean Manaea has actually been pretty damn good. A 3.3 ERA across 22 starts, over 120 innings. A team that's missing Kodai Senga, yeah, you needed someone to step up. Sean Manaea has done that for them. Like I said, a 3.3 ERA, almost put together 2 wins on the year. 1.8 WAR, F4 that is. Striking out 9.15 batters per 9, so I think pretty standard, I'd say, just in general. He's no Tariq Skubal, but better than Jose Quintana. And walking 3.45 batters per 9, I think that kind of is in line with his career norm. Never known for a guy that isn't going to let guys on base, but Sean Manaea, he's a lefty again on the mound, having a pretty solid year. I like my chances against Quintana versus Manaea in this series personally. If the Mariners rotation does kind of follow suit, it would be Logan Gilbert opposite him. So again, that's a situation where you're like, okay, sure. Logan Gilbert's on the mound, feeling good. He pitched well enough against the Phillies that you can pitch well enough against the Mets as well. This is not a situation where I think you are outmatched in any way, aside from on the offensive side of the ball. They've got Francisco Lindor. They've got JD Martinez. Pete Alonso, sure, he's having a slight down year, but it's better than a lot of the guys on the Mariners. They acquired Jesse Winker at the deadline. Mark Vientos is having a pretty solid year for them at third base. There's a lot riding on this series going forward for the Mariners, because whether or not how the outcome shakes out for the third game against the Tigers, whether or not they win that game or not, It'd be better if they won it, obviously, but if you're now facing a Mets team that comes into town, coming off a rocky series, we're like, okay, they're not really being tested there. And regardless of their outcomes, they're just not being tested. That's just what playing teams like the Rockies and the White Sox is. The Mets know where they stand. They're a half game back, just like the Mariners. They've got their entire season riding on the last month and a half. If they continue to play good ball, they're going to set themselves up great to have a chance in the playoffs and maybe make a run at it. The Mariners need to have that same mentality. They need to go out there and win every single game that they can. If they somehow put on, lose 2 to the Tigers, win the final one, and then string together 2 wins in a row against the Mets, against 2 lefties, phenomenal. You just have to go out there and find ways to win games. This Mets team, they're nothing special, in my opinion. They're fine, but you can win against this team. I'm not worried. I was more worried about facing the Phillies. It's Colton's favorite phrase. Just don't get swept. Baseball's hard, just don't get swept. This Mets team is a team that you can beat in a series, in my opinion. Their bullpen, sure. Edwin Diaz, Phil Maton. They acquired Brazoban at the deadline as well. They've got some names in there, but it's nothing that the Mariners should be scared of. There's room for the Mariners to take down this team. And you get 3 solid pitchers on the Mets side, but it's again 3 solid pitchers from the Mariners side. The Mariners don't really have a hole in their rotation like a lot of teams do. They've got 5 starters top to bottom that can go out there and give you competitive starts. And on Sunday, it's a matchup of Luis's on the mound, should the rotation hold true, Castillo versus Severino. And similar to Sean Manaea, Luis Severino's having a pretty okay year, all right? He's having a pretty gosh darn good year. Colt and I predicted that he would get traded to the Astros back when we did a big trade deadline prediction thing when the Mets weren't as good as they are now. He's got a 4.06 ERA on the year, but his expected ERA is lower, so he's pitching a little bit better than maybe his numbers show. In 22 games, he's pitched 128 2/3. He's got a 7-5 record. He's struck out 101 batters over those 128 2/3 innings. So Severino, after a bunch of down years with the Yankees, putting it together a pretty solid campaign here with the Mets. Nothing really jumps out to me that something's crazy with Luis Severino's stats here. We know what we know what the tail of the tape on him. It's going to be mainly fastball slider, fastball sinker, however you want to chalk it up. Can the Mariners get to him? How they've looked against the Tigers, I don't know. I do not have full confidence in saying anything. The only option I have to say is somehow, some way, you need to go get it done. And Castillo, did he deserve to lose the first game against the Tigers? No, he didn't. 6 innings, 8 hits, 3 earned. Bad BABIP luck and a putrid offensive performance from the Mariners in that one. So help me God get the man a little bit more run support than 2 measly runs, while it was only 1 when Castillo was technically pitching. You need to go out there and put up 3, 4, 5 runs before it gets to the final outs of the game, if you really want to have a crack at winning this series against the Mets. It's your final leg of the homestand. The Mariners, they did not put together a good start after the All-Star break at home. Something's got to give. You started 2-1 on this homestand. You're now sitting a game below 500, 2-3. Tie it back up against the Tigers and then win a series to be at least positive on this homestand, where you go 5-4 across those 9 games. Then you get a day off and you go on the road. Just win a series. You did it against the Phillies. Maybe the Mariners have good luck against interleague opponents, or for whatever reason they can't play the American League Central. I don't know. There's not a single rhyme or reason aside from they're playing up and playing down to teams. The Mets are a pretty solid baseball team. Maybe they play up to them. But I've run out of things to say, so that's going to do it for me, on episode 111 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav Network, presented by Bet Online. I don't do this very often. The Thomas Lampy episode recently gifted a member on the big trade deadline stream, so welcome back to being a member. Appreciate you guys listening, and go Mariners. And something that I just remembered while I'm editing, so hello at the end of the podcast here. Happy birthday, Mariner Mojo. Second year anniversary. First ever video uploaded as like Mariner Mojo. August 8th, 2022. Just want to give a big thanks to everyone who supported us along the way. Especially, shout out to my guy Colton. Shout out to Colton starting this whole thing back in August of 2022, letting me join in a couple like a week-ish, maybe 2 weeks later. Would not trade any part of this little journey that we're on for a singular thing. Just been an absolute pleasure meeting everybody. At the beginning of this episode, I said thank you to the people that we saw. I out of sight, out of mind, completely forgot. Thanks to Connor, the couch GM, Lyle and TJ hanging out with us. Should see something with us and on the Marine Layer socials if it's not out there yet. Connor just reaching out, trying to meet some of the peeps in the community. Took a photo, got ratioed on Twitter a little bit. Would not trade being some of the worst creators in this space for anything. So just thank you to everyone who's made this possible. It's been an absolute pleasure. Go Mariners.